Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today I want to talk about how I value and think about purchasing vintage sports card sets. And I want to do a little 101 or just how I think about it when I go to card shows, when I get approached, at home from people who know I collect sports cards, even sometimes when I've responded to Facebook or Craigslist type ads or go to let's say a garage sale and someone's got these vintage sets for sale, how I think about valuing them and how I come up with the price to offer. So we'll go into some rules. Rule number one when you're buying sets like this, that breaking up the set is almost always going to be how you're going to maximize your money. Buying a complete set and selling it as a complete set, in general, doesn't generate a ton of upside potential and money. So that leads into rule two. Grading the key cards and selling them individually is the upside to most of the deals. So could you buy a set at 60 to 70% and sell for 100? Maybe. Maybe at a card show, maybe if you're a dealer, maybe if you have a lot of customers that you've built up over time, like a GM Cards on eBay or Probe Scene or these guys who have thousands and thousands of followers. If you're just some guy like me who just does this for fun, who doesn't have people hanging on every Instagram post waiting for you to sell something, I would say breaking up the set, grading the key cards, and selling them probably in lots is going to be how you're going to do this deal most of the time to make your most money. Rule number three, graded commons, for the most part, are not material to most deals unless they're high numbers, high grade, or they're just a rare card. If it's a 61 Joe Gibbon or a Jim Gentile or a 67 high number, then they're material. But if they're just mid-grade graded commons from the 1968 top set, they are immaterial. You're not going to pay any upside for those cards because when you try to sell them, no one's going to really want them. Because most people collecting late 60s and 70s sets, for example, unless it's 71, really don't care about mid-grade to low-grade commons in terms of paying any premium. You're literally going to sell them close to what the raw card is worth in most cases, or a slight premium. But you're not going to make your money there. Rule number four, and this is really important, guys. So I said that grading the key cards is key in the upside. But when you're valuing everything, don't be optimistic. Don't go in thinking your card's going to grade 8s. And if you think they're going to grade an 8, value everything at a 7. So value everything at least one grade below what you think they'll grade. So I go 3 tiers. I say this. This could be an 8, most likely 7. I price it like it's a 6, right? Because grading works that way a lot of times. That you have 30 cards from a set, you think the average grade's a 7, you're gonna get a whole range of grades between probably 5 to 8, and you may luck out and get an 8 on a key card and get some upside, but all your key cards may come back 5s, and you thought they were 7s, and then all your common or say semi-stars come back 8s, and it doesn't really help you on the upside. So you got to be conservative when you look at valuing these kind of cards, because you're making in general probably a pretty big purchase, and you're going to have to hold these over time, spend money to get them graded. You're going to be holding this money for quite a bit of time. So you need some upside to make this deal worthwhile. Now, the different types of vintage sets you're going to run into. And so I'm going to be focused mostly, this applies to, I say all sports vintage sets, but my experience really is in baseball cards and football cards. So that's sort of the reference I'm going to go with. But it doesn't change the fact that you're going to come up across 5 types of sets that you're going to run into, or 5, types of deals you're going to hit. You're going to find people who have a complete raw set. And you're going to run into that mostly when it's like the mid to late 70s, right? Most, 70s, most 70s sets, let's say, a lot of them are raw. You're going to find tons of binder sets from 72 through the 80s. People who just put sets together, put them in binders, and that's what you get. anything before that, you're going to find a lot more, complete raw with some graded. Now, this idea of complete graded, that is something that you're not going to run across, guys, very often, if at all. And if you do, that's something for a heritage auction. That's something for, a big auction house, not probably for you. Honestly, it's not for me. If I run into a 63 top set that's fully graded, average PSA 7, I don't have that kind of cashola to invest in that kind of set. If you do, more power to you. But most of the times, these complete graded sets in any kind of good condition are headed for heritage or golden, not for garage sale, right? So I wouldn't even consider this being an option. Now, again, complete with some raw and graded, perfectly natural to see that. See it everywhere. I see it on eBay quite a bit. Incomplete raw. So this is something that you run into is like, how incomplete it is, or all the raw, key cards pulled, very, very material. And then incomplete raw and graded. Again, do they break the set up? They sell the key cards, and they just have the remaining stock. Those are all key questions when you're buying those kind of sets. So now there's different types of vintage card builders. Now I'll talk a little bit about each one, but there's nothing wrong about being these type of set builders, but you have to be aware of their motivations when you're going to deal with them, right? Like why they built their sets the way they did it, and kind of what they're looking to get out. So the first guy, the condition ain't no big thing. That set builder just wanted to have the card. They didn't care if it was missing corners. They didn't care if the card was mint or was bent in half. They went to card shows and they just found whatever card they could find and put it in a binder. And that collector or that person just wanted to have the card. So they're almost like the perfect collector. Like, doesn't matter, I just want the card. And once they got the card, they only needed one. So they didn't upgrade the cards over time. They didn't look for a certain condition or eye appeal. They got a card, put it in a binder, that was it. So you run into this quite a bit. And so those guys just were looking to fill a slot. So their sets are fun to look through because you might run into some high grade cards just kind of by sheer luck. But in general, since they didn't care about condition, the big cards probably are all going to be pretty harmed. And so these kind of deals are going to be predicated on those key cards, which are probably going to be harmed. You're probably not going to offer a lot of money. And if these people are very proud of their sets, these guys might be hard to deal with. Now, the value set builder, these guys, what I call, are building sets based on a dollar amount max. Like, they're like, I'm not paying more than $40 for any card in my set, or $100. So they set a max price value, and so they get the best condition they can get for the price they're willing to pay. But they're not going to go over a certain amount. They're like a budget. I got a complete budget I'm going to work off of. I'm not going to go above it. Now, so these kind of guys will have probably really nice commons, really good condition commons, but their stars might be, VG or worse, because again, they were looking to stay under a certain dollar amount. And so you're going to get what you pay for. And so these sets are kind of easy to price out because you have probably this condition similarity, but again, not high grade. And it's probably going to be someone that you're going to have to negotiate the fact that their vintage cards are going to be harmed. So there's not going to be a premium there for most of those cards. Now, the OCD builder. I've seen guys who build sets and they basically want all the cards to look the same way. I'm talking about centering, corners, color. They hyper fixate on one aspect of the card, and that every card will have that same kind of aspect. It'll be the cards that can't be more than 60-40 centering, left to right. Or they care about corners, or they care about perfect color, no print, but corners don't care, centering don't care. You'll see these kind of collectors quite a bit. And if they grade it, then they want it all in the same holders. So again, this will be a very consistent set. You'll be able to price it quickly because you won't have to really, think about condition, because in general, they try to keep everything the same condition. So these guys are fun to deal with, but depending on if they were OCD high end or OCD, VG or better with perfect centering? You don't know. So these are kind of fun sets to go through, though. I like seeing these because of just how consistent everything will look. And then you got the card snob. Okay. And I'm definitely one of those guys. The card snob, the guy who wants everything graded in the highest condition they can afford. Or if I can't get it graded, I'm going to buy the raw card that looks perfect. These guys are the hardest to deal with because they curated their sets, they upgraded over time. These are the guys that would buy the PSA 5 and get a 6, then get a 6 and get a 7, get a 7, get an 8, get an 8, get a 9. And then they stop when they think they have the highest condition possible they can afford. So they want a premium for what they built. They think they've curated something that's really valuable. So the card snob guys are going to be probably the best condition you're going to deal with, but they're probably going to be the hardest to get a deal on because they want a premium for what they built. All right, we're going to start here with complete raw sets. So I've got some steps here, to go through, and I'll just kind of walk you through my mindset here. But this is how I, deal with these sets. So step one is I separate the cards into some piles. So, if it's a set that has high numbers and it's got 4 piles, if it doesn't have what I call high numbers or a series of cards that are generally worth more, it could be a mid-series, a low series, whatever it is, then I'll separate that out if warranted. But then you've got your 3 to 4 piles. You got your key cards, kind of your minor stars, your league leaders, all-star cards, World Series cards. And then you got your true commons and that kind of high numbers, right? So you got these 4 piles of cards because you're going to price all those piles, right? Now, what I always do to make sure this is going to be worth my time, that I take a key card that is in the deal that kind of is representative of most of the condition of the key cards. And, to make sure that, this is going to be something that's worth investing all this time and effort into, I'm going to grade the card, what I think the conditions is and what the value is. And if you can't agree with the seller on the condition or the value of that card, then no need to go any further. Okay? If you can't get past that one card, it's not worth the whole deal. It would be the perfect time to bow out of the deal if you can't agree on one card. So, that is kind of my rule of thumb. If you can just get through that first key card to get alignment on what you think the condition is, what they think the condition is, and what you think the values are, then that is the first step to a deal, or the first step to just going home. Now, so once you get the key cards, priced out, go to piles 2, 3, and 4 and determine an average condition. So the first thing you want to kind of do is determine the condition of the piles, right? Again, I talked about some set builders build, high-end commons with beat-up stars, or everything's the same. So everything's a VG or VGX or near mint, but you need to really determine what that average condition is by pile. And then what I always do is I just determine an average price point for the pile. So if it's a common, I look at what an average card sells in most series for that condition, and I come up with what I think that pile is worth. If there's 150, 200 commons in the set, then I say the commons are $1.50. So I've got $300 of commons, full value, because that's not what you're going to offer. That's just like in your head, that's what the value is. If you just said, like, I think this is what on average I might get if I get full value, right? Now, when you talk about the minor stars and things like that, what I usually do is I look at high-low. I go like, okay, if there's a Mickey Mantle All-Star card, but there's also a Nellie Fox, and then there's Willie Mays, Clemente, you kind of go and say, on average, those 10 cards sell for $50. And then the league leader cards sell for this. And you kind of just ballpark it a little bit, because if you go line by line, card by card, you kind of have a hard time, in terms of just timing. And it does open up some debate on a card by card basis. If you just kind of do it by pile, believe me, I've done this many times, it tends to go a little faster. And I always recommend you bring a notebook with you and write down everything you're doing, because the person is going to probably ask you at a later date, how'd you come up with your prices, right? But when you add when you finally figure out the pile differences, and high numbers is the same way, what's the average price for the condition? Then you add them all together, and that's going to be your base value. That's going to be, again, the value you think you can get out of it as is. That's as is. That's no grading. You're not going to add the value of grading at this point. Don't do it. Don't think about it, because as soon as you think that the grading is going to put it over the top, that's when you're going to make that fatal mistake of trusting PSA to come through in the pinch for you and give you that PSA 7 when they give you the PSA 5, and now you're underwater, or you're just going to break even. You don't want to go through hours and hours of work just to break even on a deal like this, right? And the other thing too is, sellers, for the most part, will try to convince you that the complete set has a premium. So when you come up with the value of everything, you say, okay, well, this pile of commons is $300. Your stars are $1,000. The minor stars are another $200. So I got $1,500. I got $1,500 for what this set's worth. They'll say, oh, well, like there's a 20% premium because it's complete. No premium. No premium for just because you put the set together. It just doesn't work that way. There's no premium, and generally there's a discount when you go to sell. Like, it's like you want them to buy all these cards, and you're going to have to kind of price it under the value of the breakup. That is always kind of how it works. I know a lot of people don't understand it, but the breakup value is worth more than the full set value. It's just because of all the work it takes to sell that full set and how long you have to hold that inventory, because those big super priced vintage sets don't sell very quickly. When you break them up, you can sell them a lot faster. That's why people do it. Now, depending on the average grade of the key card, and key common cards, whatever it is, the strength of the actual condition should matter on your offer, right? If you think the raw cards could grade well, there's some key cards in there that could grade well. There's some commons that are low numbers, that are short prints or whatever, and they could grade well. Then you're going to offer a little bit more. But most offers are 60 to 80% of the base value. So again, I said $1,500. You could offer between $900 if you think everything is consistent. There's nothing that's super harmed. If you go into the deal and the cards are super harmed, missing backs, just whatever, to where it's ugly eye appeal and no one's really going to want to look at these cards, you're going to offer a lot lower than that. I'm talking about VG to X Mint sets, which you typically find. Then that 60-80% offer value is 100% legitimate. That's what most people get and most people offer. And again, the 80% is only for things that you think have some upside value. Again, with high grade raw sets, you have to resist the urge to overpay, to think of those cards as PSA 8s sitting right in front of you, because you just don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen when you send them in for grading. There could be back wrinkles. There could be all kinds of things that you didn't see the day you bought those cards. And believe me, guys, I have been in this situation where I was sitting across the table. Guy brings a complete set. I look through it. Man, I think the cards are perfect. Cards are great. I mean, I had other people look at them. I buy the cards. I go home. And 2 minutes into looking at them, I see creases. I see something we missed. I see, wax stains. It's just like, oh my gosh, now that I got better lighting, I'm not at a mall show anymore. All this stuff starts to appear. And now that deal doesn't look so great. And again, you have to resist that urge for that upside. Because again, the breakup value, again, is about timing. You're assuming, if you're going to grade all the fees, all the costs, all the time delays, and that it's holding your money. So again, the ability to break it up, get some quick cash to, that you're going to probably sell some of these cards in lots to get that money back faster while you wait for the Grady cards to come back. Again, That's why you can't offer that 100%. So 60-80% is what the typical offers are. If you find people who pay more than that, they want the set for themselves. If you're a collector, then buy sets you like and keep them. This is not what this is about. This is if you're going to sell them, if you're going to break them up and get some value out of them, you would offer 60-80%. If they don't like it, you walk away. Simple as that. Now, when there's graded cards involved, it's very similar, again, the pile method, right? But you have kind of two piles. You have key card piles, and then you have graded cards. I talked about this, is that the sets might have key cards graded, they may not. I have seen tons of sets where every card that was key was raw, but they had 50 graded commons in the set. And in general, this is an eBay trick, right? 1963 top set complete with graded. Oh, sounds great. You look at it and there's like 10 graded cards, all EX or worse, and they're all commons. It's like, well, okay, that doesn't really matter. But if the graded cards are Mickey Mantle, Clemente, Koufax, the Pete Rose rookie, then that's very, very, very material, right? And again, you want to really determine how close the condition is between the graded and the raw cards, because this is one of those things that gives you a clue, especially if you're talking about, we talked about earlier, the OCD collector, right? So if you found an OCD collector that had a raw and graded set, and they graded, let's say 20 cards in their set, and they all come back PSA 7s or 8, and you see that the raw cards look just as nice, you now have a 20 card sampling from that set telling you what that card could grade. That's pretty powerful information. That's something that would make me bid a little bit more and pay a little bit more for that set, because now I have a 20 card sampling to say this set might grade pretty well. Now, can they lie to you? Can they tell you they graded cards from the set they put together and they didn't? Yes. So you have to really determine if that OCD guy really did build this, you can't say a high-end set, where he really paid attention to those grades so that the raw cards and the graded cards pretty much are the same grade. Now, that's again the upside. Now, as far as coming up with cost of the graded cards, I always use VCP for my comp value. And the really easiest thing that I try to do is I look at the last 3 sales, hopefully from the last 6 months to a year. If it's a pretty oddball set or cards that don't sell that often, then go back a year. But if you can go back the last 6 months, if there's been 3 sales, that's enough sales to get an average to give you an idea of what that card is selling for. And that's sort of, and I would explain to the person you're buying from how you're coming up with the comps, what site you're using. I use VCP. I recommend it. But again, this is just how I look at it. Now, when I can't figure out the value of a raw card, sometimes I look at the price of a PSA 4 and a PSA 5. If a person's got a pretty nice looking Mantle raw, say 61 tops, I look at a 4 and a 5 and I think that's, if the card grades a 6 or 7, that's upside. It could be a 5. Then I look at what a raw 4 is selling for, or raw 5, to see kind of an idea of, if I can't find a comp of the raw card. You can find comps, but then you got to look at condition of the card. It's a little harder. So sometimes I do that. So it's just, how I look at it, a little bit of advice, how I sometimes look at things to get just an idea of what that card would do if I do end up grading it. And again, that -1, valuation. So that's something I definitely do. Now, step 4, again, you have to agree on the condition for the raw card piles and then calculate the cost average. You have to really do the same thing we talked about before. Get agreement on the grades, get agreement on what that raw cost average is. And when you add them all together, that's going to be, of the graded and the raw, that's going to be your, valuation. And again, you're going to be asked to provide how you came up with all your pile values. The graded cards, the raw cards, whatever it is. Keep a notebook, talk about how you got them, show them the comp, show them VCP, and just be open and honest about it. Make it an open book, make it very easy for them to follow the math. Again, when you make the offer, it's about condition, it's about upside. Again, 60-80%. However, graded cards and their ease of sale. Selling a graded card is pretty easy compared to a raw card on eBay. So that selling ease is relevant to the deal. So if all of the key cards are graded, doesn't matter what condition, you're going to be able to flip those cards so much quicker and for a more consistent profit than the raw card version of that. And we talked about you're going to have to get those key cards graded to maximize value. They're going to be at PSA for 2 to 3 months. So that's money that you're going to be spending and sitting on. So again, those graded cards are really material to the deal, to the point where you could offer more for the set if those key cards are all graded right. Again, if the bulk of the deal isn't graded, again, the ROI is so much faster. But again, if it's only commons that are graded, it's really non-material, right? Now, incomplete sets. So again, you follow all the same rules. However, there's a few things I would just want to point out. The value, again, is tied to the, key cards that are still in the incomplete sets, in their condition. So when I see an incomplete set, I ignore the comments for the most part, at first. And I spend 100% of my time grading out and again, getting that one key card alignment, going through and saying, okay, this is why I think the condition is. This is what I think the cards are worth. Here's my offer, right? Or here's what my valuation is. If you can get that agreement, then you move forward. But again, when the set's a partial set, you spend 90% of your time on those key cards with the seller to really determine if this deal is worth it, and if you're going to be close. Again, partial sets with graded cards are so much easier to sell. Again, you're breaking it up anyway. It's not even complete anymore. So breaking up is the only way to sell it. Again, in lots, you're going to sell the common cards mostly in lots, or you're going to, take some of the keys in the league leaders and sell them in just these, parcel them out. And unless you've got, again, a lot of people looking for raw cards from you on your Instagram, it's going to be, on probably most likely eBay. So think about how they sell on there. Look at what lots bring of these kind of cards, because you can look up, there's a lot of dealers out there selling these lots of cards, like 200 1968 commons, 50 1961 commons, VGX or better, or X-Men or worse, and you can see what those lots bring and give you an idea of what you're going to get. And you should be really looking at that to get a realistic value, because even sometimes going a card at a time, saying, well, $1.50 for 50 cards, $75, you see 3 50-card lots, very similar condition, might bring $30. So you have to be very careful not to do, to make that mistake of overvalue those commons, because again, sometimes these lots, these, smaller breakup lots sometimes don't bring as much, just because, again, people want to complete sets. Sometimes they want specific cards, not just a random, 50 cards at a time. Or if they're looking for a starter set, then maybe they would buy that, right? You see a lot of starter sets out there, 100 cards, 50 cards, 200 cards. So you might be able to sell them as starter sets, right? And so that could be a strategy. But I would encourage you to look up what those bring on eBay as you're valuing this out, right? And again, most partial raw sets have had key cards removed. So, if you just are left with common cards and you go through and see what starter sets bring, what these raw card lots bring, and you don't feel like it's going to be worth your time, and the dealer is really, the seller's really pushing hard, like on a price per card basis, that just doesn't make any sense, it's easy to walk away from these deals. So incomplete sets are things that, to me, you have more of a reason to walk away when those key cards aren't even there. There's nothing to hang your hat on. You're not going to grade much. You're going to just sell it all in raw sets, raw lots, or as a starter set. So again, that's a limited value to you. So the person really has to be motivated to sell, because just list it on eBay themselves. I think most of the time the people that want to sell these sets are trying to maximize their value because they think the full set's worth more. So you have to kind of knock that down too. But if they need the money, if they put the set together in the 1970s or 80s, they're in the green. So that's another reason too they're selling, is that they don't have the money into it that today's collectors do, and that's why selling is okay. They can take the 60-80%, and that happens quite a bit too. So that's my strategy and just some thoughts on how to go after these complete sets or partial sets if you're in the wild, if you're at a show as a dealer, and some ways to think about valuing them, doing some kind of, break it up into different, I call them piles or different sections, and, kind of think about it in those terms, and it'll be easier to make the deal. You can agree or disagree with the seller, but it makes it much easier to negotiate because you're doing it in stages, not as a whole. You're not trying to eat the whole elephant at once. So that's my strategy. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.